I figured I would give you a break from me being an employee and all of the craziness I have endured as an employee at various places, and go back to I am going back to me as a consumer or shopper. This one isn't necessarily a store, but I really want to share this experience with you, and all of my, I feel like everyone's gonna flip out, but especially my moms, they're just gonna be like, what? So this is a doctor's office, okay? It's not even a doctor's office, but anyways, let's get into the story. So if you have been with me for a while, you remember at the beginning of the year, January through the month of March, my husband was on what they call a TDY, and he was in Texas for that amount of time, from January to March. So I was here by myself, you know, with Aiden, who at the time was about 9 months old. Feels like so long ago. So anyways, Aiden, okay, keep in mind I'm a first-time mom, okay? And I feel like when you're a first-time mom, like, everything is really scary. You don't know if anything's normal, you know what I mean? And so, you know, Aiden's only 9 months old, and he was, like, showing signs of, like, anger already, you know what I mean? Which was just, like, so weird for a 9-month-old, you know what I mean? Like, he's not walking, and he was just, like, getting frustrated, and I just mentioned it to his pediatrician, who is actually like a family practitioner. She doesn't specialize in children. She just happens to see children and adults, you know what I mean? And so I had mentioned to her, you know, like, he gets angry, like, and throws tantrums almost, but he was only 9 months old. And she was like, you know, typically children don't express themselves like that until they're like about 2 or 3. And, you know, of course now hearing that, she didn't know what she was talking about. And so she's like, you know, that's like really advanced for his age. And, you know, at the time I'm thinking, great, like, he couldn't be advanced in like walking or talking. Like, he has to be advanced in temper tantrums, like, awesome. And she's like, you know, what I want to do is just make sure everything's okay inside. She's like, you know, a lot of the times that could be side effects to certain things. And she's like, I just want to run a few tests. And so, you know, I'm thinking, like, whatever's going to help my kid, you know what I mean? That's, like, my ultimate goal, and any mom, you know what I mean? Like, you just want to make sure your kid's all right, you know? Not to mention the fact I think I was just, like, really exhausted because, again, I was by myself with a baby for that long, you know what I mean? And I know tons of people do it. I'm just saying that's how I was feeling at the time. And so, and we had like a really hard winter, like those 3 months, like, was when we got the most snow, and I was like shoveling, and anyway, I was just really tired. So at this, you know, place, they don't do any of their own, like, blood tests. They don't do any, like, x-rays, like, none of that is in-house. Everything is, like, you know, referred to a third party. And so she referred me to, I can't even remember where it was, and to do, you know, these tests. He had to get a blood sample taken, a urine sample taken, and something else. And I was thinking, like, how do you get a pee sample from, like, a baby? You know what I mean? It's not like they're gonna pee in a cup. So anyways, when Aiden was born, he had jaundice, and so we had to get, like, blood work done and stuff after we had left the hospital, you know, just to make sure everything was okay. Jaundice is, like, super, you know what I mean? Like, it's not anything rare. It happens a lot. Me and my husband were born and had jaundice. So you just do, like, a light treatment. And so anyways, I had, she referred me to one place, and I was like, is it okay if I go back to the hospital? Because they had, like, an office in the hospital where, like, it wasn't the hospital staff, it was like a third party again. And they were freaking amazing with him, you know what I mean? Because we had issues. The pediatrician referred us to one place called Patient First, and when they went to take his blood, they didn't use a hot compress on his foot, and they literally just kept sticking him on the bottom of his foot. And when they're that small, they just use this thing where you, like, press a button and a needle just, like, comes out real quick, you know what I mean? And, like, just pricks them instead of, like, taking blood from a vein like you do when you're older, you know? And so we had that bad experience, and we went back to the hospital. And so I told her about this, and I'm like, can I just go back to the hospital, you know, and it's, like, covered by our insurance and everything. She's like, yeah, that's fine. So she put in the referral, you know, and I go to the hospital, which is literally right down the street from me, and they closed it down. They no longer are in the hospital anymore, like. And so the girl that was there, like, gave me a list of other places, and I sure as hell wasn't going to go back to the one that kept pricking him all You know what I mean? Like, she did both of his feet. One she did like 3 times, pricked him, and then she tried it on the other one, and she like couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I was like, and she said, well, he's warm enough. Anyways, so she gives me a list, and I pick like another place that's actually right next to the doctor's office. So here we go. I feel like my intros, like setting up stories, takes forever. But anyways, so, you know, it's a walk-in clinic, and it's Another Patient First, which is the name of the company. It's called Patient First, and they have tons of locations, you know. And so I go in, and I went, I believe, like first thing in the morning. And so again, they had to get blood samples and urine samples, and they needed blood. Basically what she was testing for was to make sure he didn't have lead poisoning or anything like that. You know what I mean? That would give him these side effects of like anger and irritability and stuff like that. So come to find out, now that Aiden is a little bit older, they do an intravenous, like go through the arm, you know what I mean? And so I can't even remember like how it started. It wasn't very busy in there. I remember there was one other guy sitting in the waiting room. When I first got there, there were 2 other ladies and a gentleman that were sitting in the waiting room. And so they called, you know, Aiden and I back, and they had like 3 patient rooms, you know what I mean? And so they tell me to go to this room, and they tell me to take Aiden's diaper off, and how they collect a urine sample from infants is it's literally like a Ziploc bag, and then at the top of it is a white foam sticky part, and basically you put his little Peter in there, you know what I mean? And it sticks. So if he were to go to the bathroom, it's just gonna go in the bag, right? So she tells me to put that on him first, and I said, okay, you know. So now comes the part where she needs to take his blood. So they sit you in this chair, you know, and I'm holding Aiden on my lap, him facing out, and in the chair, or connected to the chair, is this bar, right? And so most adults would lay their hand on the bar, and they would take your blood, but, you know, obviously Aiden's not going to hold his arm there, so she has me reach around, and I'm holding Aiden's arm like this, and I'm holding him down, and she is sticking him, and he is wailing. Now, you know, a lot of people, like even me especially, before I had kids, I was like, you know, I used to make fun of people like me. You know what I mean? Like the moms that got emotional when their kids got hurt, and you know what I mean? Like I did. I made fun of people like me because I didn't know. You know what I mean? Like you have no idea how you're going to feel about something that came from you. You know what I mean? Like I can't stress that enough. Like I really did make fun of people like me. But once I had Aiden, like your whole entire outlook changes on life. You know what I mean? And that sounds so cliche and stupid. And I understand that, especially probably for maybe some of my subscribers that don't have kids. You know what I mean? Like I was there. Like I always said, like I'm never going to be one of those moms that, you know, cries when their kid cries, or, you know what I mean, stays up late at night worrying about their kids and checking on them every 5 minutes. I'm one of those moms now. So I'm holding Aiden down, mind you. Like I'm grabbing his little arm and squeezing it tight so he won't move and get hurt even further. But at the same time, like in my mind, I feel like I'm doing this to him, you know what I mean? And so he's just crying, and so I started crying, you know what I mean? Like not like, like my eyes just, you know, had tears in them, and it just spilled over. I wasn't like sobbing or anything like that, but you know, I just couldn't help it, like seeing my kid cry and in pain, and the fact that I was like participating in causing it, you know what I mean? I was just like, you know, sitting there. And so the lady can't find his vein and looks up at me, and she calls in another worker, okay, and says, you know, I can't get the vein. And so she comes in, doesn't wash her hands, doesn't put on gloves, and starts moving the needle, and I about lost my you know what. And so the lady that was trying it first, you know, now that she can like look around, sees that I'm crying. She's like, are you really crying right now? And I was like, yes, I am, you know. And so the lady who's not wearing gloves and didn't wash her hands finally gets like a vein on Aiden, and they have to take 3 different vials of blood. And I was just like, oh my God, you know. And so they get done with that, and I'm like consoling Aiden, and I'm like trying to get myself together because that was just like so traumatic to me, you know, never having to do that to Aiden or any other person, you know what I mean? And I don't even like needles. And so it was just like really traumatic to me, which maybe sounds stupid, but it was. And so Aiden still has not peed in this bag and they need a urine sample. So she like that's when she told me to run his hand underwater and see if that helped. And so we were in there about another 5 minutes, and you know, I'm still like getting him to calm down, and he was fine. I think I was more like traumatized than he was. And so the lady that did it first, you know, she was just so rude. She comes in and she's like, I need this room for other patients. And I was like, okay, so what do you want me to do about like the pee bag? She's like, you know, you can just wait in the waiting room. So you want me to take my infant son out into the waiting room while we're waiting for a urine sample, which, number one, is so incredibly rude, and I don't want anybody else looking at my son's privates, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know who's in the freaking waiting room, number one. Number two, how incredibly unsanitary is that? Like, what if you peed and it, like, spilled out of the bag? Like, it's okay for you to have, like, urine in the waiting room? Like, I feel like that's against health code, you know what I mean? And she was just so rude about it. So I go out and there's only one other person out there. Mind you, I told you they had 3 other rooms. So I'm freaking pissed, dude. Like, I am so pissed because I kept my mouth shut when I shouldn't have. Like, I really should have, like, yelled at not yelled, but, like, told the lady, like, excuse me, before you even touch that needle, like, you need to put a glove on or you need to wash your hands. Like, she just came from some other, you know what I mean? Again, against health code, you know? So I get out into the waiting room and I'm like sitting there and I'm looking and it's just one other guy. And I'm like, okay. And so another guy walked in and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you could have utilized those 2 other rooms and got your shit together. Excuse my language, but I'm like starting to remember and getting really pissed off. Like, you could have got your stuff together and had those other people like utilize those 2 rooms and like banged them out real quick. You know what I mean? Like, adults don't take as long. Like, they can pee in cups. They can hold their arm out. Like, you can find veins easier sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, I do know that it's hard. I'm not saying that their job's a cinch, but, and so I'm like getting pissed. And so I take off his little bag around his penis and put his diaper back on and get him dressed. And I like put the bag down on the table. Like, I was pissed, dude. And so she sees me like getting him dressed and she's like, did you get the urine sample? I was like, no. And she was like, are you leaving? And I was like, yes, I'm leaving. I'm not going to sit in the waiting room with my son without a diaper on. And she just like, you know, went back like that. She's like, so do you want to come back later? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'm going to come back later for sure. And that's exactly what I said. I remember I was like, yeah, for sure. Like, I remember being a real smart ass. But I get out and I'm like walking to my car and I'm just like shaking my head like, oh, I cannot believe this just happened, you know? So I call Andrew, who, mind you, is in Texas, and I'm bawling my eyes out by now because I'm a person who cries even when they're pissed, and it makes me so mad that I do that because a lot of people look at it like, oh, you know, it's okay, and I'm like, no, it's not okay, I'm mad. Like, these tears are mad tears, you know what I mean? Like, tears of anger. I'm not like, I don't need to be consoled. Like, I'm pissed off, but I get so, like, it just builds up, and so I start crying even when I'm really pissed. And so I'm like bawling my eyes out, telling Andrew exactly what happened. And so he, you know what I mean? I think this was the first time I ever saw Andrew like get, you know what I mean? Like, that's my kid. And so he was like, give me the number to this place. And I was like, okay. So I give him the phone number and he calls, and guess who picks up the phone? It's this lady. And so he's like, I need to talk to a manager. And she's like, is it about the woman who just left? Like, she already knew, you know what I mean? And he was like, yeah, my wife was just in there and an employee, and she was like, that would be me. I dealt with your wife. And he's like, oh, good, so it's you. So you're gonna make fun of my wife for crying because my son's crying? She's like, I didn't make fun of her. I just asked her if she was crying. And he was like, but the way you said it, like, are you really crying right now? I didn't say it like that. Like, she was arguing with him. And then he was like, okay, so let's forget all of the rudeness. You're gonna send my wife and my infant son without a diaper into the waiting room. And she's like, that was her choice to sit out there with him without clothes on. And he was like, you're waiting for a urine sample. How is he supposed to have clothing on? And she was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not gonna sit here and argue with you, even though that's what she was doing the entire time. And so Andrew got on the phone with the manager, and I can't even remember like what she said. And he got like the district like health inspector's phone number and told them. And so I don't know what happened after that, you know what I mean? Like, obviously I never went back there, and I went back to our family health physician who like requested all this stuff, and she's like, oh, you know, the blood sample came back fine. And I was like, you know, I really wish you wouldn't have done that to me, and you know what I mean, like just told me that this was like something normal, because after that, like I was talking to other people, they were like, dude, my like infant son started biting me at like 10 months old, you know what I mean, and started throwing stuff at, you know what I mean, 9 months old. And I was like, well, what the F, you know what I mean, like if you don't know anything about kids, like don't accept me and my son as a patient, you know what I mean, to tell me nonsense stuff. And then I was like regretting even bringing it up, and you know what I mean, like I had such a hard guilt trip on myself, and it took me a while to get over it, you know what I mean. And so it was a freaking nightmare beyond belief. Beyond belief. It was so bad. So if you have had any crazy experiences like with medical people in general, not just like your kids or you know what I mean, let me know down below. I would love to hear it. So that is the end of my retail horror story with Patient First. They suck. Each and every time I've been, which is only twice, I've had a horror experience. So I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new, hello and welcome. My name is Brittany Cocco, and you are watching the Cocco channel. Please subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you guys in my next video.